Welcome everybody to a brand new episode of MoCast, the podcast where we talk about specs of World of Warcraft, and we have a juicy one for today because
it took us more than half a year to get Warlock on the podcast.
Oh man, it's been a struggle, but finally we have managed to pull in some of the bigger brains, the bigger names representing the Warlocks. All Warlock specs, but today it's Affliction Day.
I mean, you would have had to live in a special cave if you haven't heard anything about our guests. But with that out of the way, let's actually let the boys introduce themselves and see exactly who they are, what they do, and where you can find them, because they're both out there, man.
Oh yeah, let's start it off with Kalamazi, then we'll move to Sjele.
My name is Kalamazi. I create YouTube content, I guess PvE, WoW based content, more so based around Warlocks and PTR testing in general. I stream on Twitch, twitch.tv/Kalamazi, and I'm on Twitter, Kalamazing.
All the links will be in the description, by the way, guys. So definitely check the boys out. Once you finished watching or listening to this, and Sjele.
Yeah, Sjele. Yeah, that's me. Hello, I'm Sjele, or Sjele Tyven. I play mostly high-end content. I rate in Method, so world 5th gamer, and I enjoy doing high keys. I like all Warlock specs, but I've been in keys right now. I've been playing a lot of Affliction the last couple of months, so it's been really good since 9-1.
I've seen you on some demonology over there, man. I've seen you do that.
Yeah. I'm a big demonology fan, but that's not today.
We'll have a demonology podcast eventually. Too. I mean, just to kick it off, I know Kalamazi has been doing at least the YouTube thing for a while, and he's kind of like prominent in the Warlock space. I'll just
I think I might not be mistaken, but I was watching you at least starting with Legion. I don't know if you started in Legion or not, or if I'm misremembering.
I mean,
it was like right around the beginning of BFA, end of Legion, sort of. I wanted to start in Legion, but it didn't really work out until about BFA start time.
But that's when I started to get into Warlock as well, and I think I was like devouring. This is before we actually got into doing a lot of content for ourselves, but I was devouring everything that I could find, and then obviously I found Sjele as well. But and speaking of, let's say, past expansions, depending on when you guys picked up Warlock initially, when do you think Warlock?
PBC.
That was it. That's it.
No, that's what I picked up. I don't think that's what the best iteration, but
yeah, we can actually talk about that. Like, when do you guys think Affliction had its best run? Maybe in terms of fun, maybe in terms of damage or overall design, whatever you guys think it was great. When do you think that is? Was it an expansion or a patch, and why did you particularly like that version of Affliction?
I'll go first because I want to.
I assume I saw your eagerness. So.
Yeah, I think everyone really loved Warlords or Draenor. No, not Warlords or Draenor. Sorry, Mist. Siege of Orgrimmar. That like the last couple of months of MoP, when you had the dot snapshotting and legendary gems and all that juicy stuff, and you could just like soul swap everything all over the place and do like crazy numbers. Especially, I don't remember the name of the fight. It was like the council fight, like the 2 mobs in Siege of Orgrimmar. One of those fights where just permanent multi-target. You could keep your snapped dots that dealt amazing damage, just soul swapping them back and forth. So that was really fun. But for me personally, I think I had the most fun in the Legion iteration with introduction of Malefic Grasp. Was that it? The first level talent? Yeah.
9.1 for 7.1 again.
Not 9. Right? Yeah, 7.1 and 7.15 especially was like the good stuff for me. And it's kind of back to that playstyle now, so I'm kind of happy.
Yeah, I agree. Legion is heralded as like one of the better, probably like the pinnacle of Afflock, for at least a good portion of the community. You had until about now, that was the last time Lock was good in Mythic Plus, with the seed spam, some artifact traits being pretty OP, Soul Flames blowing up entire packs with 1 Seed of Corruption cast. The damage profile was a bit different back then too. People really cite dot damage as being like the main driving point of what they want to see for Affliction. And we'll get into like 9.x stuff in a bit here, I assume, but like we have a different spender now. It's no longer Unstable Affliction, which is what Dot used to put up. It's not like Rapture, which deals damage based on what dots you have out. there's been a dramatic shift away from dots being the majority of your damage, like the large majority of it, to what we have now, which is a good thing and a bad thing. I think for the most part, like my personal opinion, I think Blizz is a little scared when it comes to like having dots be 80% of your damage. Because I mean, looking at like Coven of Savara and back in like Hellfire, what's Hellfire in Taurus, right?
Taurus.
Yeah, in Taurus. Like when you have
Coven of Shore.
Yeah, there you go, right. And like Fellhounds and Coven of Shore in those raids, for example, when you have like 2 permanent targets and a class that, you know, like an Afflock, when 80% of its damage is just dots, you're doing essentially twice the damage as, you know, a warrior or whatever class, right? So why would you just not bring a class that does twice the damage as somebody else?
Yeah.
And like, there's some give and take to that. I feel like that's
Dragons of Nightmare. Remember that? In Emerald Nightmare Legion.
Dragons yeah, I do. Yeah, another great example. Exactly. Which is I think why we've seen a shift away from that a bit, and Blizz is so scared about buffing dots, which you know, I don't necessarily disagree with, but you know, better times. So.
I mean,
dot specs, heavy dot specs, like kind of break the game and encounters. Like they break encounters in the way that Blizzard does not want it to be broken. Like Absolute Corruption, which for those of you who don't know, in case, is a talent that makes your corruption last forever. And that used to completely break encounters where you would put it on a target, the target would like go into an intermission or fly away on a boss fight, but your corruption would still hit it. So you could theoretically bring like 10 warlocks and just leave it there, and it will just die on its.
Yeah, that was
like,
a plan
like
that Limit had for
even now. Yes, even now, like
multiple Afflocks with AC and kill all the 4 horsemen at one time. Or just like, you know, dot one and run away, and it would die on its own to Warlock AC. It's pretty insane.
Yeah.
I mean, I know Sjele mentioned snapshotting back in Mist of Pandaria, and that was. I think that mechanic has been like kind of long gone. I remember ferals also were huge beneficiaries of this too. And wanted to ask you guys, do you feel that type of mechanic, because it wasn't the easiest to understand or to pull off. I mean, it's way easier now, at least on feral. I don't know if Affliction still benefits from it. But you guys feel it would be beneficial to bring something like that back, and to the extent it was available in MOP?
I don't think so. You go first.
I was gonna say yes, but hesitantly. I sort of like that kind of playstyle with a bit of a higher skill ceiling. I believe it's still around for feral at this current point in time.
It is,
like
but it's like a very weak. It's easy to pull off.
Right.
It's like, get some blood talents going, and that's fine.
I didn't play a crazy amount in MOP. I stopped playing at the beginning of Kata and came back towards the end. So I never got to experience it firsthand, but I sort of like, I wouldn't mind the skill ceiling being raised a decent, or at least a little bit for certain specs in WoW. And like, I don't think AF is the easiest as of right now, but I don't think it's incredibly complicated either. I wouldn't mind it, but I see both sides of it. I don't think it's the right play from a overall player base perspective, but me being a bit selfish, I wouldn't mind seeing it back. Let's put it that way.
Fair enough.
Yeah, I kind of agree with that. I don't think snapshotting should be brought back in the same way as it was in MOP. It was a little bit silly.
A little bit too much.
A little bit silly. Yeah.
But something in the lines of how it used to work, maybe not as broken. Was just thinking of how Affliction Warlocks could potentially benefit once again from something like that. Given that, Affliction isn't like the easiest, but I know I'm afraid to get into it. I look at Warlock, I see, destruction. All right, let's go, baby.
You guys mentioned the shift from dot damage, which I mean we've seen with Shadowlands a couple of major changes to Affliction. Major changes from somebody that only started to play Affliction a couple of years ago. And for me, I played Affliction in Legion with I actually had the Corruption Legendary, and I didn't know how strong it was until I went into a dungeon. I was like, oh shit! And then BFA came around, and I was incredibly disappointed. Warlock being one of my favorite casters in the game, I had the most horrendous time playing dungeons with Affliction, and I probably wasn't playing it the best that I could. But it felt cumbersome compared to pretty much every other DPS spec, almost, in the way that it was dealing its damage. And maybe you guys can clarify a little bit more. Maybe this is why, at least for the average player, the shift has been gone from dot damage as well. At least in Mythic Plus, it was a little bit like it wasn't a bit difficult, but it was
tiresome maybe, and maybe tiresome as it wasn't always that rewarding from what I saw on streams and stuff. Like I haven't touched it, but it felt like you had a lot of work to put in, and it wasn't always really that great. Like the effort to reward mechanic over there didn't really feel like it was what it was supposed to be.
Probably in like low to medium keys anyway.
Yeah. What do you guys think?
Definitely, like the BFA iteration of Affliction, it was like you were playing 8D chess with every single nameplate in dungeons,
yeah, exactly,
and multi-target scenarios. And then you look at the damage meter, it's like, I'm doing so much wait, no, I'm not. And then you get a little bit disarmed. And meanwhile, like the Demon Hunter is just I-beam blade dance, like.
Oh yeah, I was that guy
going crazy. So like, which is easy to play, but it's also fun. Like I played a lot of Demon Hunter in BFA, and I found it fun, even though it's super easy. So things don't need to be hard to be fun, and it doesn't. I don't think that there should be a correlation between this is hard to play, therefore it should do more damage. I don't think that correlation should be there. I think like everything should be balanced off of its top end potential, regardless of how hard it is to play. And then you could argue that everything should be equally hard to play then. But that's my take on it. But I agree with that. Affliction was until 9.1 a very hard spec to play in Mythic Plus and multi-target scenarios for average results.
Yeah, we've definitely seen a shift from Legion, like we mentioned, where it was put up your agony, like maintain a couple dots and just spam Seed of Corruption heading into Shadowlands. They shifted away from Unstable Affliction being our soul shard spender to Malefic Rapture, which is a spell that deals damage to every target that has dots on it based on the amount of targets that are on it, or the amount of dots that are on it. So in 9.0, we were actually playing Siphon Life over like Writhe and Agony or Absolute Corruption, which is essentially a third dot, mostly like normally just played in single target previously. And you would try and maintain those 3 dots for the most part, even on trash packs and plus, in 3-4 plus target settings, obviously in single target, but it made it like a juggling act where you play a conduit that increases your agony duration, which we still do now, but you were juggling like 13, 14 dots on trash packs and trying to dump all your raptures in one window to do all this damage. But you see other classes just go in there and start spinning or drop a wild spirits, and it's like, yeah, I'm getting destroyed playing a mini game in a mini game here, but they're just dropping a circle and destroying me in damage.
Circle is strong though. It's a strong circle.
That is true. That is true.
Very
strong circle.
Powerful circle, yeah.
Yeah, but I guess with this we can actually start talking a little bit about how Affliction is, in case somebody hasn't actually picked it up yet. In Shadowlands, from my perspective, at least it changed a little bit because I was very used, like my muscle memory really worked in putting Unstable Affliction as my spender, and even like weeks into playing Malefic Rapture, I kept pressing Unstable Affliction multiple times, like, oh no, this is not the way.
Yeah.
Why is my shards not going down?
Yeah. So obviously it changed a bit. Personally, it took a while for me to see the appeal of Malefic Rapture, and I am still not sure how I feel it. Although I'm so fucking happy that Sow the Seeds is actually really the way to go in dungeons, which seemed to be the logical choice for many years, but it didn't seem to always be the best choice so far, at least from what I was able to tell. So can you guys talk a little bit about the transition from BFA and into Shadowlands, and how do you see Affliction performing now, both in raids and dungeons, and what do you think? Is it better? Is it worse? Can it get any better? What do you guys think?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, in BFA and even Legion, Unstable Affliction was our shard spender, but like I think partially due to Blizzard not wanting dots to be the majority of our damage, and also like having an interesting, like sort of an awkward damage profile, they shifted us to Malefic Wrath in Shadowlands, which is good and bad. Personally, like I know not many people like Malefic Wrath. I think that in the majority of settings that AF is played now compared to where it was in BFA, I think Malefic Wrath is a better, Malefic Rapture. I'm sorry, yeah, Rapture brings an overall better damage profile than Unstable Affliction did. It gives a bit more priority, like burst or like burst on ads at times, or priority ads are spawning. Or it's a bit more burstier than putting up 5 Unstable Afflictions on one target and waiting for that damage to be dealt over 10, 12, 14 seconds. You can do it in 3, 4, 5, and you're not trying to spread multiple UAs and plus, you're just putting up your dots and rapturing things down. But for the most part, it's still like that semi-similar, I guess, just dot profile we've had. We still have Agony, Corruption, Siphon Life if you're playing Unstable Affliction, Phantom Singularity. The best covenant for Warlock is Night Fae. I'm just gonna. There's no debating that. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Necro Lords. It is what it is. Well, okay.
The Chinese Destrolux are Necro.
That is true. Necro Lord can be good for Destro. That's for another time. But yeah, that is true. That actually is true. And Nightbite gets us a 6 dot in Soul Rot. So Warlock has sort of shifted from being like, we're more like a 1 and 2 minute. Afflock is at least more like a 1 and 2 minute burst class, which depending on your CDs, they've shifted things around a bit. Soul Rot is a 1 minute cooldown. So basically you'll try and pool shards for that point where you have that buff up from the Knife Bay, or that ability up the Knife Bay buff or ability, and then you just start rapturing during that period of time. And it's basically every minute. Every other minute will line up with your major CDs, and you sort of go from there. So yeah, it's been a little bit of a shift in damage profile, but I think it works out better in Plus. And as far as like so the seeds goes, it was not the best in BFA. It used to be 3 seeds in Legion, and they nerfed it to 2.
Wait,
correct?
did it used to be? No, it used to be 5.
No, shot. I don't think so.
No, what? I swear, no, it used to be 3 or 4 extra seats, like 5 total, and then they nerfed it to 3 total.
Are you sure?
It
might have been 4 total, maybe. Look it up.
I'm like 34% sure.
It's a very specific number.
It's
Yeah.
34, got it.
But,
so you're more than a 3%. I mean, regardless, like it was nerfed in BFA. There's like 2 seeds, correct? I believe.
Yeah. It went from basically it was a damage buff on 2 and 3 targets, because you would actually reach your maximum potential for damage on all targets on 3 targets, because that was your maximum amount of seeds. Compared to, I'm pretty sure it was 5 before, 5 total, 4 extra. But maybe I'm just
I'm
delusional.
getting old. My mind might be going. 5 sounds insane, but maybe you're right. It might be.
I'm also, I turned 30 last Friday.
Oh,
wait, you're 30 now?
Yeah.
You joined me? Oh my gosh, dude, that sucks. I'm sorry.
I've started getting gray hair. Everything is bad.
Yeah, I feel that.
I cannot complain. I'm not going to say anything.
But
I'm joking.
Yeah, so I mean, in 9.1, they ended up buffing the seeds. It was 2 seeds. I believe, was it 2 going into 9.1 or was it 3? I can't remember.
No, it was always 2, but they buffed the damage of it. They buffed seed damage.
Right, so it's 3 total now. Wasn't it 1 additional cheek? One additional?
Maybe it was. Maybe I'm a monkey.
It might be a bit.
I just know that it was bad. I know that it was bad.
Regardless, it was buffed in 9.1. Damage was considerably. So the Seeds has shifted towards it's more or less the go-to talent as far as Plus is concerned. Affleck can bring a very, very large amount of AoE with the Knife A Legendary, Decaying Soul Satchel, and Soul Rot. It's one of the best AoE burst classes in the game, putting aside like Windwalker, Bone Dust Brew procs, and certain other classes. It can be very, very strong, but it lacks a pretty good bit in single target playing that build, because you're losing Siphon Life, which is a 3rd dot. For Rapture, more dots, more Rapture damage. You're losing Phantom Singularity or Vile Tank because you're playing the Seeds. So it's a bit of a give and take of a trade-off there, that damage profile.
You guys mentioned again that Affliction essentially turned into a burst 1 to 2 minute burst class, which I mean I remember the Havoc in BFA being pretty much meta for a long time, and it wasn't particularly burst. It just had like high consistent damage, unless I'm wrong about this. But it does feel like more than ever, it feels like everybody's shifting to burst classes more and more. Maybe how they're figuring out M+ better, and people who essentially classes that are not burst. Like we can take Marksman and BM for instance. Like Marksman has the volley burst, and BM just has high damage, and people always prefer burst. Is it an issue of class design, or is it an issue of encounter design? And do you think that because of that kind of dictated the way that Affliction is designed today, at least in Shadowlands, because of the way that the encounters are designed, where they favor burst, especially let's say raids, where you have like all sorts of intermissions and only like windows of 30 seconds to a minute to do like high damage and stuff like that? Do you think that that's the reason why it's like this? Do you think like if the encounter changed from, let's say, not requiring as much burst, that Affliction can see like maybe a different design, maybe more aspects on maybe more focus on dots or something like that?
Everything is leaning very much, like every class right now is leaning very much towards like the 1, 2, 3 minute burst windows, right? And I think that's reflected in, like you said, in encounter design, where Like you just say, oh, in this intermission we're gonna use this and this cooldown to get through it, and there's not as much emphasis on overall DPS requirement, especially like if you take away like actual world first progression. Like anything that is not world first progression, just stay alive, do the mechanics, and have the good damage in the good windows, and then you're fine for the most part. So I don't think that's gonna change unless they seriously rethink the way that the game is working in terms of design. For M+, it doesn't really matter. Like you don't really need huge burst windows to do M+. You would just like not pull as big, but you would have more pulls. Like if you would, the reason you have like these huge massive pulls right now in M+, as like kind of meta, like for example, in Halls of Atonement, when you go left and you pull the Shard, you pull Houndmaster, you pull another pack, you pull Groundskeepers, all of that together in Bloodlust is kind of like a meta pull in, especially in high keys. It is there because that's how you utilize the toolkit. If people had a different toolkit, then you would just like not do that pull. You would maybe add a pull or two in the dungeon, but you would still go as fast because your consistent damage, sustained damage would be higher. So I think that it mostly comes down to encounter design on Blizzard's part, and then class design, and then people just adapt. People will always find a way to beat the game, I think. They're very flexible. The player base is pretty flexible.
Yeah, I agree. This tier, we've seen a lot of the stop-go. I mean, the past few tiers, we've seen a lot of the stop-go DPS checks being a thing, which sort of relate to that. The 1-2 minute damage profiles, I mean, Kel'Thuzad, I think, is a great, or I guess was a great example of this tier with the stop DPS, wait for him to reset, boost going down. I believe Max was looking at a boomy damage profile on stream from one of like the rank 2 parses, and it's just like Venthyr Boomkins with Ravenous Friends. You're just like through the roof DPS and like nothing. Then like 4 minutes later, through the roof DPS and nothing. So yeah, I don't know if it's like a philosophy change on Blizzard's part, just odd raid design for the past few tiers. I think it might be a bit of both, but I agree. I don't think anything's really going to be changing with that over the near future. Even if it does, people are still going to find ways to min-max every little bit of it. Gaming's changed. WoW and gaming in general has changed, ever since like probably Legion, when, it's become more competitive in the esports kind of scene. And I think this is what we're set for. This is what the future's going to look like, these 1-2 minute burst classes and stuff. But like I said, most of that is just most classes have those profiles at this point. I can't think of a class that has like just solid sustain most of the time. Maybe like
BM.
I was gonna say BM, yeah. BM, like I don't know what else. Like because they're pretty short and
kind of has like high consistent damage, maybe very small burst windows, but Havoc also suffers from not having, especially in raids, not having like a big cooldown that really makes an impact. Because meta for Havoc apparently is kind of dog shit.
Meta lasts like a minute.
Because meta cool down, I don't know. It's the big thing we have to raid.
But yeah, me personally, I think I would prefer less emphasis on cooldowns. Like I would prefer cooldowns to be weaker and the in-between parts to matter more. Because right now, like as long as you do your cooldowns correctly or you utilize your cooldowns well, you can run around in circles in between, and you're gonna do like 90% of your effective DPS all. Yeah, so me personally, I prefer more emphasis on the in-between parts. Even like you want to have cooldowns, but I think that they are right now too impactful in general, not only for Affliction but for other classes as well.
Well, I was trying to circle back a little bit and getting knee deeper into Affliction, as we always do on these podcasts. Going to ask you guys on talents of Affliction currently. Do we have any dead talents? Do we have talents that should be reworked? Is this a big can of worms that I'm opening up right now?
I'm gonna go look at the talent tree just so I don't miss anything.
Okay.
So, in my struggle for content over the past year and a half for YouTube because of these delayed patches, I've talked about is a very large amount. There are some talents that are underperformers. Blizzard actually mentioned they would address these talents in 9.15, but we actually had PTR marked as released last night, in case you didn't see the Sjele, which is interesting.
Yeah.
Not much last, but regardless, there are some. I do think some are better than people think, just not taken because they're not best. I know in the first row there's Nightfall and Inevitable Demise, which ID Inevitable Demise is played. It's a trait from Legion or BFA, like an Azerite trait, which is played in niche settings, sort of. But Drain Soul is just the de facto go-to in that row for shard sniping.
Again, the Asian scene, they just do weird shit, and sometimes it's really good. But a lot of the time, they think outside of the box, and some of the people playing Aff in Dungeons are playing with Corrupting Leer and Inevitable Demise in order to bring Dark Lair down to a 1 minute cooldown with the higher level potency conduits that we have now. So Corrupting Lair is a potency conduit that makes it so every time your unstable affliction or agony deals damage, it has a chance to reduce Dark Lair cooldown. Which means that you can put the goal is to extend every single soul rot that you have, and then you can also use that extended soul rot window to get like a 50 stack Inevitable Demise AoE drain life. So I haven't been able to try this seriously yet, but I don't think that Nightfall and Inevitable Demise are as dead as talent representation would indicate.
I agree. I actually played that. Sorry, I played that build like last patch. It was interesting. It's better than you think it is. And I mean, with the updated like eye levels on conduits and stuff, and like how easier, I guess it'd be easier to get it like to a shorter cooldown. I wouldn't be surprised if it's actually pretty decent right now.
And Dark Lair 2 minute base as well now.
Yeah, exactly.
3 minutes before. That's a huge change.
Mm-hmm.
That's a huge
You had to play like Corrupting Leer and Dark Caller, which was like 2 half dead or subpar talents in that spot. Now it's like only one semi subpar, but. I mean, there are outside of that, like one of the shifts going into 9.1 was that Blizzard removed Shadow's Embrace was a baseline ability that Afflock had in 9.0, and they moved it to a talent in place of Dark Caller. Dark Caller was the ability that made our Dark Lair 2 minutes instead of 3. So while it was a good shift, I think personally, like overall in our toolkit, it wasn't an equal trade-off in damage because like giving us a 2 minute Dark Lair instead of 3. 2 minutes will sync with our Dark Soul cooldown. So every 2 minutes we have all our CDs ready to go. It's really good like toolkit profile wise, but it wasn't in single target at least an equal trade-off when you're losing. Shadow's Embrace was like a passive 9% damage increase on whatever target you had whenever you drained it, and you could play a conduit that increased it to like 11 or 12. It wasn't an equal trade-off at all. So that accompanying the nerfs like Rapture and other conduits we got really hurt Aff single target overall.
But it feels better.
It does. It feels much better. It's much easier to buff abilities and buff classes and increase damage a bit than rework profiles and toolkits in the middle of an expansion. So I was happy with that trade-off overall. It does feel better, and it's easier to use on certain fights too. Thinking back to like, or better, I guess it's better. I don't know how to word that. Thinking back to like SLG in Castle Nathria, you played our call anyway.
Sometimes, but like the thing about the Shadow's Embrace before it was removed is and put into, or not removed but put as a talent. You had unstable affliction, corruption, siphon life, agony, haunt, and then on top of that you had the Shadow's Embrace that you needed to keep up. And then you wanted ideally on fights in Castle Nathria when it was used, like Huntsman, you wanted to keep Shadow's Embrace on 2 targets. And then you have all of these dots on 2 targets plus Shadow's Embrace on 2 targets. It was basically impossible. You had like no room for error to keep that up. So I'm really glad that it's moved to a talent, even though it was together with like Malefic Rapture Conduit nerf and ability. Like they nerfed the Conduit that buffed it, and they also nerfed the ability itself. It was a pretty hefty single target nerf. It went from being one of the best single target specs in the game to like almost one of the worst before Malefic Wrath Legendary was introduced. But yeah, overall a really good change. But I think we're getting a little bit off track here. We were supposed to talk about dead talents.
It's okay. I love it.
I was gonna say Shadow's Embrace is like, it's not dead.
It's technically better than Haunt on 2 and 3 targets, right?
Yeah, and there's actually some parses popping up playing Malefic Wrath, playing Shadow's Embrace now, and they're like high-ranking parses because I guess the Haunt GCD and cast time's not. I don't know. I saw him last night. What I was getting at,
like Guardian,
like on Guardian, Sylvanas, you can look it up.
Okay.
Either way, what I'm getting is like some lock talents aren't played as much, like Nightfall, like ID, like Shadow's Embrace, but they're not actually that bad. Similarly, like Vile Taint, which is an ability on the same row as Sow the Seeds and Phantom Singularity. In 9.0, we played Phantom Singularity in Mythic Plus or Vile Taint, depending on what you were doing, and no one touched Sow the Seeds. Now everyone plays Sow because Sow is a lot better with, AoE damage, huge burst windows with our Legendary. But PS and Vile Taint actually aren't that bad either. The one ability that is, let me think, there's Soul Conduit, which sort of Soul Conduit's a bit in the final row. And
it's just because Mystery is so good. Dark Soul Mystery is so good.
Exactly. Yeah. It competes with there's some heavy hitters in the final row. Soul Conduit, Dark Soul. What's the third ability? I'm blanking here.
Creeping Death.
Creeping Death, yeah. Creeping Death. We'll leave Soul Conduit out. Creeping Death and Grimoire of Sacrifice. Those are the two abilities I think need to be looked at so badly. And they just don't. I know Hunters and Frost Mages have Frozen Throne, Lonely Throne, or whatever, and Hunters have like Lone Wolf, which I believe is both like a damage increase, like a flat percent whenever they don't have pets out. Grimoire Sacrifice used to be that way a long time ago. It was like a 10% damage increase, I believe, something along those lines, or intellect increase. But they changed it, I think, going into BFA. Whenever you sack your pet, there's a chance for it to proc and deal damage. Whenever your pet is sacked, there's a chance, like whenever an ability deals damage, for Grimoire of Sacrifice to proc and deal like a bit of shadow damage, but it doesn't scale in 2+ targets, and the damage is abysmal. And you're losing your pet, you're losing the utility it brings, the interrupt, the purge, whatever. It's just
you're not losing the interrupt, because the interrupt is yours now.
Right, yeah. Sorry, that is true. You're losing the purge, you're losing the dispel, whatever you want, and technically you're losing the pet interrupt. So I mean, it's sort of something.
Pet interrupt is nicer because it's off global. Like pet interrupts or pet abilities in general are kind of underrated in PvE content. In PvP, it's very much appreciated, but for a lot of PvE content, having the ability to just keep casting or keep your pet on a target and then interrupt it, even though you're doing something completely different, they're utilized on second to last boss in the Gahun raid. What was that? Sakul? No. Yes.
It's
where
Gahun was the last boss. It's
it was him. It was Gahun, like his little friend. What was it?
Oh, I think I know
Sakul.
Is it Mithrax?
No. Mithrax. There you go. Mithrax.
Yes.
Yeah,
Why did I say Sakul? Anyway, Mithrax, you would have like your pet interrupt something on the complete opposite side of the room, which is usually beneficial. But the problem with the talent Grimoire of Sacrifice is that it just doesn't do any damage. It does more damage to have a pet than to pick the talent and sacrifice your pet. The pet itself will do the same or more damage, and then you get another talent on top of it. And like Kalamazi said, it doesn't scale into multi-targets, so it will do the same damage on one target or 1 million targets. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, and it shares a row with Haunt and Shadow's Embrace. Haunt is your
really good.
Yeah, it's your go-to single target talent for the most part, barring niche builds and like high-end stuff and whatever at times. And Shadow's Embrace is like what Blizzard wants you to play. I would say in 2-3 target at times, because they actually increase the duration in 9.12. So you have Haunt single target, Shadow's Embrace 2 target, and then I think personally it'd be really cool to see Sack go back to like a baseline like intellect increase or damage increase, because that would sort of scale in the 3+ target setting, and you have options in every single setting versus just Haunt or Shadow's Embrace and a completely blank talent that nobody ever takes in the last 10 years. It needs to be reevaluated, because that's just terrible. Yeah, you want to talk about Creeping Death at all, Sjele?
I mean, Creeping Death is kind of dead in the way that you don't want to spend more. For those of you who don't know, Creeping Death will make your agony, basically all your dots, deal their full damage faster. But that also means that you need to refresh them more often, which you don't really want to do. Like, you want to spend your globals putting up more dots on more targets, or spend them on Drain Soul or Rapture or something. So in a spec that is already very like kind of global starred on multi-target, playing Creeping Death just emphasizes that problem more. So yeah, those two talents are maybe dead talents. And right now, I wouldn't say dead talents, but in the level 30 row where you have Demon Skin, Burning Rush, and Dark Pact got buffed by an insane amount. It was already strong, and then they buffed it in 9.1, and now, like, if I'm a fully geared warlock, if I press that button right now on my screen, I get an absorb shield for 45,824 damage.
We agreed to not talk about this, Sjele. What are you doing?
I'm just saying, that's a 1 minute cooldown. That is absurdly strong. So I would say that maybe Demon Skin is dead talent right now, but that is not because it's bad. It's just because Dark Pact is ridiculously strong.
Yeah, and touching on the Creeping Death thing briefly as well, 2 things. Like, number one, it doesn't really increase shard gen. It's the same amount of ticks of agony, in just a lesser. It sort of does and doesn't, but it's the same amount of agony ticks in a lesser window duration wise. All it does is shorten the duration of your dots. And
the reason it doesn't increase shard gen is because they have a hidden modifier on it that reduces the shard regen that you get by the same amount as it increases the tick rate.
Yeah, and number two, if you've played with Malefic Rapture windows with Soul Rot and PS, there are times that you don't want to refresh your dots before you go into the pandemic window before that whole Soul Rot PS thing happens, and playing Creeping Death makes that feel even worse. Your dots are falling before you finish your Rapture. It's just not good. It's anti-synergistic with what the spec does. It feels like a relic of the past. They just left there because they didn't know what to do with it going into this expansion. It needs to be reevaluated and probably just removed or changed tremendously.
It's there because it used to be a dot spec, right? Where the dots dealt damage. Now the dots do damage, but it's indirectly because it's tied to the raptures, right?
Exactly.
The rapture deals damage based on how many dots you have on the target, so it's technically still a dot spec, but Creeping Death doesn't synergize with it in any way. So that's we just don't like Creeping Death, okay?
That's exactly it.
It's cold.
We just don't like it.
I subscribe. And you guys mentioned briefly more in passing Soul Conduit as well. And you don't necessarily consider it a dead talent, but it's still on the same row as Dark Soul. And considering that the game kind of wants you to have like a little bit of burst when Soul Conduit kind of go against that mindset. So if the encounter design would continue to be this way, I have a hard time imagining that Soul Conduit would be in use unless it was used to fuel maybe a bigger cooldown.
Like what?
I don't know, man. Maybe they'll give bigger demons back.
So Soul Conduit plays into like the sustain damage. So let's say that if they nerf the cooldowns, then Soul Conduit could come back because it's basically just a sustain pressure through in between that gets buffed. It doesn't necessarily buff any specific window that Dark Soul does with like every 2 minutes you have Dark Lair, Dark Soul, and Soul Rot, which is like your big damage window. And unused trinket preferably.
There's a legendary now that called Malefic Wrath that you essentially maintain rapturing like once every 6-ish seconds to I guess sustain a buff that increases your drain soul damage by a good bit. There was some theory crafting behind that early on where Soul Conduit might have been a little bit better. Maybe not better than Dark Soul, but better than usual with that. But even if like after like just testing in things, it's just not like Dark Soul is just that powerful with those 2-minute Dark Lair windows, with those burst windows, Soul Rot PS. You just can't match it. It's just really good. And that's that. You know, I took it as part of the expansion, and I don't think I'll ever change from it. It's just the talent you take. That's it. You know?
Unless it gets nerfed or changed, or the other ones.
Which shouldn't. It's not that good. We're not saying it's too good. It's just no other good options. Okay.
But buff Soul Conduit. Make it right. What is it now? 15. Make it 25.
20, yeah, right. Didn't it?
Make it 20. Make it 25. Then we'll talk.
Sure. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. There you go.
Then you guys talked about good and bad talents. What about covenants? Because obviously Night Phase.
End of story.
Was Night Phase always destined to be the best for Affliction, considering that you get an extra dot?
Thematically, it matches so good. Don't you agree?
Yeah, because nothing says drain the soul of your enemies more than fairies flying around your fucking face.
Kalamazi, you were saying something?
I was just laughing. I was waiting for you to take this.
Yeah, but do you remember Kalamazi at the start of the expansion?
Yeah. Yes, our meeting.
Basically, you were. It was Necrolord all the way, right?
It was Kyrian.
Kyrian, right?
It was Necrolord. They nerfed it. Then Kyrian,
Yeah, it was, and this is on like Shadowlands beta, right?
Yeah.
Then it used to be Necrolord, and then they nerfed that, and then it was Kyrian, and then Kalamazi made you made your video already, right?
Recommending I had everyone. It ready to go.
Okay, you had your video ready to go, recommending everyone to go Kyrian, and then basically the people that were hardcore into like the World First race, like myself and THD and a lot of other warlocks, basically came to the conclusion that like Nightfade just looks more versatile with like the same single target value, but scales more into multi-target. So we just ended up like basically almost a day before release. It's like, oh yeah, we're going Nightfade, by the way.
We had this 1 a.m. meeting of like myself, THC, for like 2 hours. I think you took a little bit of convincing initially, maybe a tiny bit, but then it was like, I think Zyro actually was like, why are we just not playing Nightfade? And THC was like, oh yeah, probably should. And then we tested it for like an hour. And we're like, yeah, I guess we just play Nightfade. And then everybody was super pissed. But like, listen, I don't know what I'm going to do. Like, welcome to Shadowlands. So yeah, but Nightfade. Go ahead.
No, just Ubu.
Oh, well, okay. Night Fae's been the front runner since the start. The legendary that it has now in 9.1, which came out after the Race World First, which might have changed the specs that were played for lock during the Race World First, week 1, week 2.
You had it available.
It didn't come out to week 3, right?
You would have it. No, you had it. You had legendaries on Mythic first week after you did your.
Oh, right. But everybody did Cinders or Wilfred's, right? Yeah.
I mean, it just the Affliction didn't come up as a
it wasn't like
until like later into the progression cycle.
I guess it's sort of due to like Remnant. Yeah, we'll get to that. I don't want to get too far off track here, but yeah, that's fair. Soul Render, to be fair though, Afflock cranks on, but yeah, that most everybody crafted different legendaries early on. But either way, Night Fae's been pretty much the go-to since the start. Soul Shape's just too good. It's just really, really good. Fleshcraft, the Venthyr teleport ability is fine, but Soul Shape's just too good. Every class gets a Mage Blink. It's incredibly good. I mean, it's just ridiculous. And Soul Rot does a lot for Afflock too, being a 6-dot. You can put up more Rapture damage in your burst window. It just changes the way the class plays. And yeah.
So you guys don't think that 915 will make any changes to that? Not even niche situations?
I mean, right now, isn't technically Necrolord better for single target on F?
I don't think so.
No?
On F?
Okay. Yeah. With Malefic Wrath, right?
Oh, I don't believe so. I haven't seen.
Okay, but it's really close. It's really close, right? But the thing is, right now, all the covenants, kind of except Venthyr, probably are actually pretty good. Like you can do decently as a Kyrian Af. You can do decently as a Necrolord Af. The Night Fae just provides, especially in multi-target scenarios with the Night Fae legendary, like a huge amount of power when you combine it with Soul Seeds. You press this button, then you press the other button, and then you do big damage. And that's what everyone wants to do. And it's also very flexible in terms of the soul binds. You can have, like right now, I play you can play Nia for Demo, it's really solid. You can play Dreamweaver for whatever you feel like is your main. So let's say you play Dreamweaver Af, and then you got Karain, which is a decent Destro soul binds, if you want to go that way. So it's very, very flexible. You don't have to do a lot of work. And as you said, Soul Shape is just a godsend. It makes you you feel a lot safer picking Dark Pact, which, as we said earlier, is very, very powerful. When you have that just blink in your back pocket to get out of sticky situations.
No, there it is. I think also the fact that Night Fae has so many good things for the other Warlock specs. It's just it's similar to like the rogue specs as well.
As much as I dislike its soul shape, just
it's a beautiful thing, man. It just screams out Warlock. What can you do, man? At some point you gotta sacrifice the theme of it. And correct me if I'm wrong, guys, but if like people are only interested in like, I would say mid-level content, like I don't know, 15s and heroic rating, would the covenants matter that much in that spectrum of gameplay, or are we talking like super? The major differences would be felt on a more higher level content.
In my opinion, personally, no. Play what you want at that point. I think Night Fae brings the best universal applicability. If that's the right term to use. Respect.
And it's quite far ahead on multi-target with Soul Seeds because of the synergy with the Soul Session legendary, regardless of key level. But if you, in terms of raid, you can do like if you're just doing heroic raids or normal raids on a more casual level, then raid content, I think you can play pretty much any covenant, then no one's going to be like, what, is that a Kyrian Warlock? Kick him.
With the white wings on the back?
Yeah. I've seen some Venthyr locks put up some serious damage in plus with their legendary as well. But the thing is, like, Venthyr just doesn't have the same overall capabilities of Night Fae for other specs too, which is like, Night Fae's just good across the board. It's good at everything. That's the problem. But like, no, if you're doing casual stuff, yeah, exactly. If you're doing like casual stuff, don't care a whole lot, chances are high you're probably not going to notice a huge difference, barring like decaying soul satchel Night Fae stuff. And yeah, so believe me, I've heard a lot of, I don't want to be a fairy because I'm a warlock. Say what you want, it's fine, doesn't matter. If that's how you feel about it in the nicest way possible, I don't mean this in a bad way, it doesn't matter. Play whatever you want. It's not gonna make a difference. So
furries are cute.
The storyline's sort of evil. I don't know if you pay attention to it, I guess, right?
Yeah, exactly. There's some twisted things going on over there, man. But that's not the podcast where we go into that. Okay, we're just skipping it. I was going to come to you guys from like the perspective of like, never played Affliction in PV at least. Really digging the spec. Always find it like super interesting. How would you, I don't know, advise or tip a brand new player who's like thinking about getting into Affliction but is really scared because he heard the stories about snapshotting, about all the buttons, about maintaining dots and whatever? How would you like get somebody into to start playing Affliction?
It's fun. I mean, the thing is, it has to be kind of a playstyle that you like. If you don't like to press dots that do damage over time, that's what dots are. Yeah. Then you're not gonna like Affliction. That's just how it is. But you, especially in multi-target, like the selling point for new players, try out a Soul Satchel, Soul Seeds, and Mythic Plus, and just like look at the damage numbers that you're able to do, because it feels good to do a lot of damage. That's the way it is.
It is. That's true. That's what's up. Couldn't have said it better.
Yeah.
So try that out. It's very much like kind of like a point-click thing. You do a little bit of a setup, but it's not super heavy on the dot management, and the single target can get a little bit stale. Like it's just keep dots up, don't shard cap, and press Drain Soul. Yeah. But the AoE feels very rewarding when you press those cooldowns and go ham. So that would be my selling point for new players.
I think you pretty much hit the nail on the head. Right, well, that's it. AF is enjoyable and plus, and honestly, once you get it down, I don't think it's that complicated. Same with like, which we're not talking about demo. Same things with demo. Like I think people think demo is incredibly daunting. It's actually not as bad as people think it is. I think people are just afraid to hit dummies nowadays and learn rotation. Honestly, like when I was learning specs previously, I hit a dummy for 3 or 4 hours. Honestly, people are afraid to do it now. It's not that complicated once you get it down. But it's fun to play. So if you enjoy dot classes, it beats Shadow Priest easy. Shadow Priest is boring. And you don't have to give away your Dark Soul. You have your own Dark Soul and you can steal their power infusion, right? Like it works both ways, you see? It's perfect.
It's a win-win situation.
Exactly.
I mean, yeah, thinking about a little bit of the future here, right? Because obviously we kind of know what 9.1.5 will bring. But wanted to go a little bit on the route of speculating, not too much, but it is implied, I think, that at some point in 9.2 we'll see tier sets. Now I'm gonna try to pick your brains. What can possibly be added to the Affliction spec on a tier set that could actually improve it? Or maybe fix it if there are things that are fixable. And we know tier sets don't necessarily address talents, so that goes out the window. But what would you guys see? Maybe looking at the past, I don't know, tier sets from Legion or MOP or whatever. Can you see something like that happening again?
Perfect. I made a video on this 2 weeks ago. I went through every tier set back to tier 1 and made a video on this. This is perfect.
we can have a link.
I did not make a video.
No, honestly, I can't even remember half of them. But there are some. Like I remember thinking back. I think it was Blackrock Foundry. There was a tier bonus that whenever you had Agony, I think it was Agony Corruption and UA applied to a target, it doubled your shard gen. If you're casting Drain Soul, you get 2 shards versus 1. Whenever Agony ticked and got your shard, like there was that bonus which seemed unique. Let me think. There was Corruption had a chance to generate a Soul Shard, which was I think the Nighthold bonus, which is sort of cool. I don't really want them to take back or bring back some old bonuses though. Like some of them are cool, but I like seeing
new stuff.
New stuff, right? One point that I think probably should have been brought up or should be brought up at some point in this debate is Contagion. Just having Unstable Affliction do 10%. Your UA target takes 10% increased damage. It used to be a passive effect that was baked into Unstable Affliction. Even in BFA, I think Legion as well, when Unstable Affliction was our shard spender. So whatever you had UA on took 10% more damage. Yeah, it was in BF or Legion because you spread your UAs around for more damage. But that was removed in Shadowlands. But at the same time, Unstable Affliction is limited to 1 target now. Whether you can put it on 1 target and that's it. You can't spread it anymore. But they removed Contagion. With all the nerfs coming in, or that came in 9.1 to Afflock and single target and stuff, like a lot of people were saying that they should just bring back Contagion. Instead of like rebuffing Rapture and this and that, going too in-depth here, just bring back Contagion. have whatever target your UA is on take 10% more damage from you, which it seems like a bit of a boring tier bonus, but I think it would actually go a decent way after single target.
I just want to say that 10% is way too much. That's a 10% flat single target bonus from a tier set. That is not okay.
Let you worry about that.
It here somewhere, but I mean,
can you look Aventhir Boomy in the eye and say that again?
Dude, I don't want to hear. If I got to hear my ramp one more time, it'll be too soon, dude. I'm so over that. It's hard to say though. Sjele, do you have any ideas about tier or like?
I haven't really given it any serious thought. Like I'm the kind of player I usually just deal with whatever I'm given. I'm not generally big on speculation, but maybe right now, like our rapture deals damage based on how many dots are on the target. So maybe let's say 1% buff for like your rapture deals 1% additional damage per dot that's on the target to emphasize that high dot count and make more use of your burst windows. Maybe that could be a fun thing. It's not really something that is it doesn't change your playstyle at all, but maybe that could be fun. Do you have any ideas that would change the way you play?
That'll be I think the goal ultimately for tier sets.
Yeah, because I think those are better. I think my suggestion was a bit boring. Sorry.
No, I mean it's hard to say. Like I always like how tier bonuses have been sort of ways of like tweaking and tuning classes over the course of expansion, or the way they change playstyles. Right? They take talents that aren't necessarily as good, or legendaries aren't as good, and give another unique interaction that makes that much better. Like back to Legion, you had like 2-piece played with a different 4-piece with 2 different legendaries, which might have been a bit too much. I'm fine with it, but like that might have been a bit too much from Blizzard's perspective. But yeah, legendaries that change the way the class functions. Or like I mentioned, if you have like dots to your target, and you're casting Drain Soul on it. If you're agony gives you a shard, you get 2 shards. That'd be sort of cool. That was an old bonus, I believe. Like I said, Blackrock Foundry. To a similar extent, like I could even see something like Racking Brilliance coming back, like the Azerite trait from BFA, right? That whenever you generate a shard, you get an intellect proc, or every other shard gives you an intellect proc, right? Which would sort of change the way you might play around things a little bit with like racking procs and rapture windows, but it's hard to say. I definitely wouldn't mind something that's a bit based around single target. At the same time, I wouldn't mind a bit of an AoE increase either. Like outside of Sow the Seed stuff, which is probably a bit excessive, but
okay, I have one. I thought of one. Drain Soul. Dealing damage with Drain Soul increases the damage of Drain Soul by X%. Stacking infinitely, but it's cancelled when you cast another spell. So you want to have like long stretches of casting Drain Soul, which like ramps up in damage, and then you would have to redo your dots, and maybe like you're playing Malefic Wrath legendary maybe, right? So you need to keep that buff up. But like basically putting a bigger emphasis on the in-between stretches of pressing Drain Soul and being planted in a good place. And the same way, dealing damage with Rapture increases the damage done by Rapture by a certain amount of percent. Or so then you would, like on AoE, you don't want to do Drain Soul on one target, but then you could do like multi-dot Raptures. Yeah. And you want to chain as many Raptures as possible. With big shard regen and stuff.
I mean, there should be a penalty over there. At the, like you said, but at some point you either want to refresh your dots or something like that. Something needs to happen, because other than that, they would go into
exactly. Like you like when you press another spell, it resets to 0.
Yeah, I think that's actually pretty cool.
You can make it based around like Unstable Affliction too. Like whenever it crits, it increases like rapture damage by X for 10 seconds or whatever, or Drain Soul.
A proc. Yeah, that procs are kind of fun. Procs are kind of fun.
And it changes playstyle as well, right? Like
yes.
Yeah,
I like
cool.
that. I like procs.
Also looking, this is something I wanted to ask you guys. Looking even further ahead, we don't suppose we're gonna have any 9.3, so it's probably gonna jump straight into 10.0. Outside of any major reworks or additions or swaps in the talents like we might have seen coming from BFA to Shadowlands, what do you guys think Affliction should keep going into the next expansion? It can either be a Covenant ability, a legendary, a conduit. Maybe you think that whatever Shadowlands brought to Affliction should stay unless it was changed again. So do you think that anything from this expansion that was added to Affliction should become either baseline or a talent or a passive? Like, you know, we like the way we had with Inevitable Demise. Anything like that comes to mind that we should keep in 10.0?
You go.
I'm thinking. I don't.
Okay, then I go. I think Rapture, Malefic Rapture, is a great spender. I think it's much better than Unstable Affliction. I think it should stay, and I think it's great, and I love it. So keep that. I also want to basically keep the tuning on single target and AoE encounters, so that if you have 3 targets, Seed of Corruption with Sow the Seeds should be your highest DPS per shard spender. That should always be the case. If that's not the case, then I'm not happy.
But hear that, Blizzard? Gotta make Sjele happy.
There you go.
Better listen to this. That's fair enough. Do you have any of them, Kalamazi?
I was going to touch on Rapture as well. Sjele with the hot take here, but I agree. I think Rapture is a better spender than Unstable Affliction. I know it's sort of a hot topic between like people wanting more dot damage and not having UA stacking anymore, but I think they can probably agree that it feels a lot better putting up your dots and rapturing everything down. And plus, like if you're not playing all that big burst damage coming out hitting Rapture versus like just spreading 5 UAs and waiting infinitely for them to like deal half the damage and the pack dies. Rapture is just a better spender. It just is. If it's PvE profile better, potentially PvP profile better. Yeah, I wouldn't mind seeing a tiny bit more of a shift towards dots being a little more relevant, like raw damage wise, but that's a really, really slippery slope to go down. I don't know if there's even much room to actually do that with Rapture being a thing. So the one thing, I guess like the one change, a tiny bit off topic here, is something maybe with Dark Glare. I think it could quite possibly be, which is our other 2-minute cooldown. I don't want to get too off topic here, but like,
go ahead.
It was things were changed from BFA going into Shadowlands. Like we played a talent called Deathbolt that dealt damage to our target that it hit based off the dots that they were on that target and their duration. And Unstable Affliction stacked to 5 in BFA, but it doesn't anymore. We didn't have Rapture, UA was our spender. So we put up all our dots, 5 Unstable Afflictions, cast our Dark Lair that extends our dots, then launch a massive Deathbolt, which hit like for a crazy amount of damage. We had so many dots rolling at a huge duration. It had to be nerfed multiple times, the interaction between the duration and the Deathbolt. But then they removed Deathbolt, they removed UA stacking, and they left Dark Lair the same the way that it was. So like it didn't have Deathbolt to power itself up. They didn't have UA stacking to power itself up. Now we do have Rapture windows now, which gives you a longer duration of more dots. But like Dark Lair feels even like, at least to me, significantly less powerful than it used to be in like BFA content. I would like to see some kind of change to Dark Lair. I don't know. Sjele, maybe some kind of insight on that.
I mean, right now, Dark Lair is there to extend your soul rod. That's it.
I mean,
that is what it's there for.
It deals damage with I-Beam increased based on how many dots you have on your target, but I-Beam at the end of the fight is like 4%. It's horrendous for a main cooldown.
It actually deals quite a bit of priority damage on big AoE pulls. So if you do like a big M+ pull and you want to do a lot of damage to one target, then putting your Dark Lair on that target is more than an insignificant amount of damage. But I do think as a standalone cooldown, it's pretty weak. Like you could literally not press the button on single target and do like it's supposed to be your cooldown. You could not press it and you would still be able to do like 90% of your damage. Yeah, like it's actually insane.
Mm-hmm. Some kind of change, like have it do more damage to your UA target, like which sort of fits the profile of the spec now too, because they want UA to matter. It would make a huge difference, but it just sort of, once again, just like how Creeping Death and Soul Conduit had been, it just sort of been left by the wayside. Just it's a relic of the past. Here's BFA and just go have fun. Like I don't know, it needs to be looked at again, honestly. So.
Well, fingers crossed. Hopefully, a lot of the things that we talk about on this podcast don't necessarily go to deaf ears. So I know somebody's listening.
At least the person who shares the double can be a tear set.
Yeah. Well, let's not that. We talked about shards of domination for too goddamn much on all the podcasts. It's fine. How about the goddamn tier sets, huh? You know, the proper ones, not stones.
Exactly.
Well, hopefully 9.2 will bring them.
I personally liked Affliction coming into Shadowlands, at least in Mythic Plus as well. I kind of feel the dot focus because I always thought it was so unique to just like put all the stuff and then just sneeze and still do the same amount of damage with my hands off the keyboard. That felt kind of nice. And I guess the encounter designs are just not the same anymore. But who knows what we're gonna get into the future. Hopefully so.
Have faith. We will definitely. Yeah. Also, I did wanted to. I don't know how much we did this at the beginning, but to whoever's watching or listening, do check out the links in the description. For both the boys. Sjele is streaming keys most of the time, at least from what I catch. And Kalamazi, Kalamazi is all about that content. There's a ton of stuff. He mentioned a couple of videos he had on the channel, but there's a lot of stuff in there. So check the links in the description for both the boys. It's definitely worth it, especially if you're into any warlock shenanigans. Go for it.
100%.
I don't know how we're sitting on time.
We're about an hour in, so I guess we won't be taking you guys' time too much. I know there's some juicy stuff happening on the PTR soon that we kind of want to
Mage Tower
dab our fingers in as well. But we're super happy that you guys agreed to do this, and hopefully we can touch on Affliction, maybe other specs of Warlock in the future as well.
Look at that demonology.
Because demonology is my jam, so I have some questions locked in the chamber.
But we'll definitely catch both Kalamazi and Sjele on future podcasts for different specs and talk and debate more. Affliction has been covered. There's I don't know if there's many things to look forward to coming into 9.15. I guess not that much, but
yeah. So far there's I haven't seen a lot of things.
I was waiting for more actually. In terms of balancing and changing specs and whatnot. It didn't seem that heavy on that front. I don't know. Maybe this is a release candidate, so who knows if there's ever gonna be any for 9.15. But 9.2 is on the horizon, so definitely we'll check it out
far
there.
Off horizon.
But that being said, thank you everybody for tuning in. Thank you Kalamazi and Sjele for joining. It's been a pleasure. And once again, check the YouTubes, the Twitches, the Twitters. Everything will be in the description for both Kalamazi and Sjele. And we'll catch you next Monday with a brand new podcast. What's next? Do we know what's next?
It's gonna be a secret. I don't know.
Yeah, something's gonna happen. Okay, we have a bunch of talks. I know we have Fire Boys in the talks. We have the Rogue Boys in the talks as well. Getting into some juice there.
It's so hopefully Arcane as well.
Arcane Mage, yeah. So there's a bunch of stuff coming. Thank you, everybody.
Take care, everybody.
Bye.
I've been loving it then, I still love it now. Still, I play WoW. Still, I play WoW. Getting better every day, let me show you how. Cause still, I play WoW. Still, I play WoW. It's getting harder to stay, but at the end of the day, it's a guilty pleasure, so just log in and play. Whether it's classic or retail, I'ma do a /bow. Still, I play WoW.